I rise to talk about the continuing toll of gun violence on America and my home state of Illinois. For several months now, the New York Times columnist Joe Nocera has published what he calls the Gun Report. It's a daily compilation of stories about shootings across America. This report, posted online on the New York Times website, is startling. It is one thing when you hear the dry numbers about 87 Americans killed, 200 wounded every day by gun violence. But Joe Nocera's report goes beyond the numbers. It shares some of the details about the news reports of these shootings. For example, Mr. Nocera's report for Monday describes shootings that took place over this last weekend. The tally of shootings in America goes on to fill 19 paragraphs. Let me read just some of the descriptions of the shootings that took place over this last weekend right here in our beloved country. A 12-year-old boy was accidentally shot in the face by his 11-year-old friend Friday morning in Camden, New Jersey. 2 Minneapolis, Minnesota police officers were shot and wounded at a traffic stop in Uptown Friday afternoon. Avery Williams, 22, and Jamario Troutman, 24, died, and a third man in serious condition after a Friday afternoon shooting in West Palm Beach, Florida. Tamara Logan, age 44, a teacher's aide, was shot multiple times in the head outside McKinley Elementary School in East Erie, Pennsylvania, Friday morning. 46-year-old Bruce Bird shot and killed his wife, 44-year-old Stephanie Bird, then turned the gun on himself in Lawrenceville, Pennsylvania, again on Friday. These are just a few of the reported shootings on Friday. There are dozens more of these stories from Saturday and Sunday, including a fatal road rage shooting in Arkansas, a convicted felon who shot and killed his son in Missouri, 4 people found shot to death in their home in Waynesville, North Carolina, and at least 19 people shot during a Mother's Day parade in New Orleans. Sadly, there were multiple shootings from my home state of Illinois. In Mr. Nocera's report, they included a Saturday night shooting in Rockford, and at least 9 people shot over the weekend in Chicago, 3 of them fatally. It's hard to read Mr. Nocera's report and not feel that something is terribly wrong with this level of gun violence. Have we heard it so often that we reach the point it has no impact? I think most Americans who look at this report agree that we should take steps to reduce this massive toll of gun violence. There are a lot of sportsmen and hunters in my home state of Illinois. I know many of them. They're in my family. I've met them, I've talked to them. They get it. They want their Second Amendment rights protected, but they don't want to believe for a minute that a firearm is going to be sold to someone who is going to use it in a crime or someone who is so mentally unstable that they can't handle it. That's what the Manchin Toomey Amendment was all about. We needed 60 votes, we got 55. We lost 4 votes on this side of the aisle, Democratic side. We picked up 4 votes on the other side of the aisle. And let me commend my colleague, my Republican colleague, Mark Kirk, who joined me in voting for this measure. Truly a bipartisan effort from most senators who voted for it. But we fell 5 votes short of breaking the Republican filibuster. The issue of gun violence isn't going to go away. We're losing more Americans every day to this gun violence. Just this morning, the Chicago Tribune reported 2 people were killed and 11 wounded in shootings last night in Chicago. Chicago is a wonderful city. It's a great city. Proud to represent it and proud to spend much of my time there. But I'm saddened by the gun violence that takes place there and in all the cities, major cities across America. Since 26 school children and 6 teachers were killed in Newtown, Connecticut on December 14th, America has been fixed on gun violence. Just the images of those beautiful little boys and girls from their first grade class killed in their school by a man firing away repeatedly with a weapon. It's just heartbreaking. I met some of those parents. They've come by my office. They showed me the pictures of their kids, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Beautiful little boys and girls gone. And we've got to ask the question, can we do anything about it? Should we do anything about it? Will we do anything about it? Because the sad reality is, since that day, that horrible day in Newtown, Connecticut, when that massacre occurred, more than 4,000 Americans have been killed by guns. Think about that. More than 4,000 Americans have been killed by guns. If you read Mr. Nocera's report in the New York Times, you can see the devastating loss our nation suffers every single day. Sadly, America leads the world when it comes to gun violence and gun death. It doesn't have to be that way. This past weekend, the Chicago Tribune published an article looking at the problem of straw purchasing. That's one of the main ways that convicted felons and gang members get their guns in Chicago. The article said that many straw purchasers see the opportunity as easy money and a victimless paperwork crime. In fact, straw purchases lead to crime and killings. They're the primary factor behind gun violence in the city of Chicago. What is a straw purchase? That's when a person who can legally purchase a gun buys one to either give it or sell it to a person who's going to use it in the commission of a crime. It happens a lot. Almost 10% of all the firearms confiscated in the commission of crime in Chicago over the last 10 years, almost 10% of those guns came from the state of Mississippi. Mississippi. Why? Because you show a driver's license in Mississippi and you can buy a gun. In fact, you can buy a trunk full of guns. And you can head out on the interstate, headed for some alleyway or some crack house in or near Chicago, make your sale that night, and come away with a lot of money. That's what straw purchasing is all about. One of the provisions in the law, which I co-sponsored, a bipartisan provision, Senator Patrick Leahy, Democrat of Vermont, Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, and myself, as well as my colleague, Senator Mark Kirk, a Republican colleague. We made this a bipartisan effort to say, if you're going to buy a gun, to give it or sell it to someone who's going to commit a crime, you're going to commit a federal crime yourself when you do it, with up to 15 years in prison. Real hard time for a real crime. It was defeated. National Rifle Association opposed us. Why? Why? To sell more guns? This doesn't help a sportsman or a hunter for someone to buy a gun so that someone else can commit a crime with it. And yet they defeated it. That's the reality of what we're up against here, but it's a reality that can change. Senator Kirk named that provision in the bill after a recent gun victim in Chicago, 15-year-old Hydea Pendleton, beautiful little girl who came out for the time of her life to be at President Obama's inauguration in January, went back to Chicago, and a couple weeks later was gunned down standing at a bus stop outside of her school. I can't believe that people voted against that measure, to stop the straw purchasing, to make these people accountable who buy these guns and put them into the flow of deadly crime across America. Well, people are speaking out now in a way they never have before. Mothers, doctors, mayors, law enforcement, family members of victims aren't going to sit down and be quiet. They're going to speak up. This coalition has been turning up the heat on members of Congress, and I know it's received a lot of publicity. But in a democracy, elections count. We've got to make sure that people are elected who want to have gun safety in this nation. We need real reform when it comes to gun violence and gun safety. We can't just walk away from the daily toll of shootings across America.